Well, I'm complimenting Dimitris because this is not about the infrastructure, which is absolutely needed, especially in a country like Greece, but what is the impact of AI? So let me try to suggest the different ways in which it impacts. And I'm going to give you an example that's familiar to me, London Business School. So how do we think about that? Well, the way that we would think about it is, I'd say, 3 levels. The first thing is what AI does in terms of changing your operations. Why is things like ChatGPT important? Because if you put ChatGPT, it will ace most of the standardized tests. Now, for academic institutions, that's serious. You need to rethink how you evaluate people to come in, how you evaluate people as they are in the courses, because your assessment methodology must change, and you need to rethink the very simple operations. For the example of organizations, that means that you simply start using things like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you want to use to see how it can be inserted in your operations. The second, and here's where it starts being more interesting, is when you start looking at how things like AI require you to develop new skills. In a world of AI, what does a London Business School graduate operate with? We're not going to say, no, we're not going to have you access. It's the exact opposite. We're using ChatGPT in order to support and enhance both the experience of how people learn, and then say, what is it that we need to start developing as the critical faculties of the people who will interact with AI in order to be able to add value. And I think that for a number of organizations, this goes even deeper because it starts going existential. And it starts going, the question is, what is the function of an academic institution in a world of AI? What is the function of people who are in a profession? People who have managed information processing, such as in the healthcare sector or any other sector that makes assessments and professional judgments, where you can have an AI system substitute that. And that will then start having us as society, not just organization, rethink the way that we look at the value add. That's just the 3 different levels in which we operate, and it shouldn't just be the first. Next thing, how do we use it? And that's the trap that we have seen people in organizations in terms of AI. The CEO of Turnitin in a panel 3-4 weeks ago said, well, you know, what I have found out is that in about 5 years, because of ChatGPT, I will need 20% of the engineers that I have, and they all will come from high school, no need to bother with university. Now, of course, there were audible gasps from the audience, and it is true that a number of professions may be under severe pressure, but I think that that suggests the initial way in which people are thinking about it, which is using AI as a substitute to the labor that you have. Once you get over that, once you are excited with the toy that you got in your hands and what it can do, then you start thinking about the way that it can complement it, and the way that it can augment, and the way in which you need to start having the human inside over and above the gazillion ethical and soon enough regulatory and legal responsibilities of what is the human in the loop. How do we ensure that we don't have things that are just running themselves for themselves wild? And then we start going to what is really cool, which is thinking about, okay, if you say that we need to complement it, how do I think about the relative position of AI and the things that I do? This is where we don't know enough stuff yet, but it's really interesting for those of us who spend their time trying to understand how AI is transforming business models. So we're starting to speak about the jagged production frontier. What do we mean? AI is good in doing some things, but not terribly good in others. It's good at doing things, and there was a study that was undertaken by the Henderson Institute, where I am an academic advisor, working together with colleagues from Harvard and Wharton to see what is it that AI does to the productivity of consultants, right? Typical knowledge workers, let's see whether we can get rid of some of the consultants or enhance what they do with AI. So they looked at it and they found a couple of really interesting things AI does. First of all, for at least one group of things, a creative exercise and coming out with a new strategy for footwear, it increases the productivity for up to 40%. Now, mind you, if you think about what happened with electricity or steam engines, we're speaking about 10 to 45%. So it's a massive increase in productivity, the likes of which we have not seen in recent history. But, and here's the interesting but, it does things in a discriminatory way. First of all, it helps the laggards not the leaders. If you take people who are good, guess who's going to benefit? People at the end of the tail. What does that mean for the way in which we run organizations? What does that mean for the way that you assess the people on the basis of their performance? Second, it differs significantly when you start shifting to places where there is a true answer. There was a second test, and the second test was a bit subtler because we knew what the answer was, and we wanted to say, hey, AI, are you going to figure it out? Turns out it doesn't. And turns out that the performance of the people who did that was worse, and it was even worse for the slackers, but generally brought it down. And what made it even worse, if you train people telling them, hey, let us tell you what technology does, the results become even worse because we become arrogant. Unfortunately, this is a common human trait, not a technological trait, arrogance. We become arrogant, we think we know what technology can do, and to put it in rather prosaic words, we just buy the stuff that AI sells you. If you ask ChatGPT and you read the answer, you're going to say, oh, that looks very sensible. That sounds really very convincing to me. Probably right. Not necessarily. And this is the interesting thing. We are at a place where it is a little difficult to be able to sort out between the stuff that is where things like ChatGPT help you, the stuff where it brings you back, and most of the work that's happening right now is to be able to sort it out. So what's the bottom line? Hugely important, absolutely. Requires guardrails, but also involvement of human in the loop. We should not use it as a silver bullet because in and of itself, alone, it cannot do stuff, and we need to think about how we can complement it with a vision of what it does and where you want to go, and lots of fun work in terms of strategy, because I do expect that it's going to have a massive impact, and the impact will be seen in both the ability of companies to succeed and in their ability to adapt. We already know from the previous generations of AI, the non-generative AI, which we used to call big data a few years ago, that it increases the inequality in terms of the companies. We know that the organizations that have more of a digital operating model can benefit from it, which is why, sadly, we are concerned that big tech, once again, will squeeze the rest of the world, and we will become complementers that provide bits and bobs. So lots of work, both on the policy side and on the strategy side.